This is the J. Scott Outdoors podcast on Western big game hunting and fishing, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today. I'm your host, Jay Scott, and I live and breathe hunting and fishing, spending half the year in the field experiencing God's creation. I hope you'll enjoy hearing about our adventures. Guys, GoHunt.com Insider is the title sponsor of this podcast. Get everything you need in one spot. Join Insider today. Find and plan your hunts more effectively than ever. Complete state coverage. See detailed information for every unit, every species, every hunt. Interactive maps. Quickly find hunts that meet your exact search criteria and explore them easily. Strategy articles. Learn new things and find hidden opportunities with exclusive articles. Species breakdowns. Top trophy units are hiding in plain sight. Find them with our statistics and historical data. Another great thing about GoHunt.com Insider is they have monthly giveaways that are worth $100,000 plus a year. Each month you will automatically be entered to win gear, tags, and hunts. That is if you're an Insider member. Past prizes include a $22,000 Doll sheep hunt, 3 Red Rock Precision rifles with a $21,000 value, 5 Zeiss Conquest HD binoculars with a $7,500 value. Not to mention, this past July they gave away 4 hunts, an antelope hunt, 2 elk hunts, and a mule deer hunt. Join Insider today and get a $50 KUIU gift card. All you have to do is go to GoHunt.com/insider, click on the blue Join Now button, use the promo code JScott at checkout, and GoHunt.com will send you a $50 KUIU gift card. I want to thank GoHunt.com Insider for being the title sponsor of this podcast. Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today is August 5th, and today's episode is going to be a little bit of a unique episode. I have recently had a conversation with Brian Call of the Gritty Bowmen, who is another hunting podcast on iTunes, and we decided to do a joint episode. He is going to be airing this episode on his podcast, and I'm going to be airing it on mine. We have a great conversation about a bunch of different topics, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Before we get into that, I wanted to thank the sponsors of this podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com, who is the title sponsor of this podcast, and the Insider members of GoHunt.com have recently been winning a bunch of hunts. The month of July, they gave away 4 hunts. They just gave away a $22,500 Doll sheep hunt, and the Insider itself is a great researching tool to use when you're applying across all of the western states. And I just want to thank them for their sponsorship of this podcast. You will hear several promotionals in these podcast episodes about GoHunt.com Insider, and I want to urge you guys to go check them out. Their website, GoHunt.com, is awesome. The Insider portion of GoHunt.com is a fabulous tool for any Western hunter, so go check them out. Use the promo code JScott when signing up for Insider, and you'll get a $50 KUIU gift card. I also want to thank Deadeye Outfitters. DeadeyeOutfitters.com is a lifestyle hunting apparel company for hunters by hunters. Check out episode 45 of this podcast with one of the owners, Nikolai Kavilia, and you'll see what I mean. Deadeye Outfitters makes quality t-shirts, sweatshirts, and hats designed with hunters in mind. Use the JScott promo code and receive a 10% discount on all purchases at DeadeyeOutfitters.com. Listeners have been ordering stuff from DeadeyeOutfitters.com. I get some information from the company, and there's a lot of my listeners that are enjoying the products there. So check them out. Guys, I want to thank you for your support of this podcast. I want to thank you for all the comments. If you would like to send me a comment or question, you can reach me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. And a bunch of these episodes are a result of getting questions or getting comments from my listeners requesting certain things that we're going to hear on these podcast episodes. So I appreciate all of the support from you guys. You can follow along the adventures here at jscottoutdoors.com, on our Instagram page at jscottoutdoors, my associate Dar Colburn, DARRCOLBURN on Instagram. Of course, the Facebook page, J Scott Outdoors, my personal Facebook page, J Scott, and the YouTube channel, J Scott Outdoors. So, guys, let's get right to the episode here with the Gritty Bowmen. And we're staring hunting season right here in the face. Across most all western states, we've got archery deer, archery antelope, all starting here in the next couple of weeks. So this fall is going to be an exciting time. I look forward to bringing you lots of content and information here, and sharing stuff about our hunt. So thanks for your support, and let's get right to the show.
All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Bowmen podcast. I am here today with Jay Scott from J Scott Outdoors podcast. And for those of you who don't know about Jay, we're going to have him introduce himself and tell you a little bit about him.
My name's Jay Scott. I'm from Arizona. I'm a avid hunter and fisherman. I've wanted to hunt and fish ever since I was a little kid. I had a unique opportunity in that I didn't really have a lot of opportunity to hunt and fish as a little kid. My grandmother bought me a membership or a subscription to Field and Stream magazine, I think when I was 5 years old. And I can remember as a kid reading every article from start to finish, and being a kid that just wanted to be exposed to the outdoors. And you know, I had a few friends dads that hunted and stuff. And I went on like a dove hunt and went on a quail hunt and maybe to shoot some rabbits and stuff. And anything that I could do, whether it was fishing for bluegill off the dock or anything, I wanted to hunt and fish. And so, you know, when I was 14, 15 years old and was finally kind of exposed to it and shot my first deer. And then as soon as I got my first car, you know, and had the ability to go and do the hunting and fishing myself, you know, I was head over heels. I was a golfer ever since I was a little kid, and I played golf in high school and college. And quite honestly, by the time I got through college, I was so ready to do something other than golf. And you know, I dove headfirst into hunting and fishing, and you know, I'm a perfect example of take a kid hunting and fishing, because it was something I wanted to do my whole life. And I was always the kid that was on the side of the river fishing, and I would see a boat go by with guys fly fishing out of it. And I said, if I ever get the opportunity, I want that to be me. I want to be able to do that stuff. And so, you know, I'm a big proponent of taking kids and introducing them to the outdoors. I want to thank you, first of all, for having me on. And we're also going to do something kind of unique. I'm actually going to replay this episode on my podcast. And I think it's important for us as outdoorsmen. You know, I've never met you, Brian, but I think it's important because we have a common bond of being outdoorsmen and sportsmen that, you know, we share. And you may have listeners that like some of my content, and I know I'm going to have listeners of mine that are going to love your content. So I thought it was important for us to get on and have this podcast and just talk about hunting and you know, tell me a little bit about yourself, Brian.
Well, well, first of all, when you sent me a message on Facebook and said, "Hey, Brian, let's you know, I'm Jay Scott, let's do this," I was really excited. You know, honestly, I've been following your podcast since it first came out. I love podcasts. I love people. I love the way people interact. I love the whole campfire, buddies sitting around and telling stories. I find myself, you know, in the evenings, you know, when we're out camping, we all kind of congregate around the fire or whatever, and we all sit and we tell stories and talk. And I learned so much from those experiences, and I enjoy them so much that it sort of led me into the whole podcasting thing. And so sometimes, though, you know, as hunters, we can be a little competitive. I think in general, you know, it's kind of in our nature a little bit.
Sure.
And so with that, with the egos and the competition, sometimes we compete against each other rather than come together and work together.
Yeah.
So, when you extended that invitation, I jumped on it. I was excited about it. I think that it's important that we do that sportsmen work together. And that doesn't mean we don't have different opinions or prefer different gear or have different sponsors or whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we can't also respect each other for the contributions that we bring to the table and for us as human beings. So I started the Gritty Bowmen kind of off the cuff. I had a bunch of friends. I grew up in Oregon City in Oregon, and since I was a kid, just have been drawn to the outdoors, fishing and hunting. And when I've been hunting with my cousin since we were old enough to shoot a gun and shoot bows. I got my first bow when I was like 11 years old. A serious bow, and started shooting all the time. And I took that thing everywhere I went, and it's been that way ever since. And, now I have a core group of friends that we go hunting every year with, but now my kids are getting old enough. I'm taking them out. My biggest passion, aside from hunting, is actually filmmaking. I want to make movies. I want to tell stories. And so out on the Gritty Bowmen website, I just started doing this about, I think in February of this year, I really started putting out some video. We have about 10 years of footage that we've just gathered, just with cheap video cameras and phones and stuff over the years. And I started putting that together. And then I went to the Full Draw Film School. I learned how to make a movie and do some filming. And I started using those new skills and tools to get out and make a film. And we made one last year. That's in the Full Draw Film Tour right now. And it's a great film about father and son and the outdoors. And, I hope we make a lot more going forward,
in preparing for this podcast and I've listened to your podcast before, but I went on your website and I watched some of your videos, and I really like the feel and the flavor. It's got a real good flavor to it. So, just in the few that I did watch, I thought I really like the style of this. And, I think it's, you should be commended for in a kind of a society where, big giant stuff and whatever is kind of takes the forefront. I think it's important to bring it back full circle and bring the family aspect into it and bring, the attitudes of hunting and why we do what we do. And, it sounds like we have similar paths in the fact that you started your podcast in February. I started mine the last week of February. Good friend Giannis Patelis, who's the Meat Eater producer, friends with Stephen Ranella, they had started a podcast and were had some really good traction. And I had been on a podcast, Corby Taylor with Wild Game Hunting Podcast, which is a successful hunting podcast, last summer. And honestly, I didn't even know what a podcast was. And I did an interview on elk hunting with him. And then when Giannis and the Meat Eater did a podcast, I loved what they were doing. And I kind of thought, I could do this, and maybe I'll have my own flair or what have you. So I just started my podcast, and, as you can attest, the support from your listeners, getting emails and messages every day, with people saying thank you and people saying, I really enjoy it and I've gotten a lot out of it and I've learned. And it's like, for me, I feel like it's my duty and I owe it to people to not project what I know, but have guests on that are very knowledgeable, ask them questions of things that I want to know, which I'm assuming a lot of other people want to know. And so we've taken a real informational, educational kind of approach on the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. And, the support has been overwhelming. And I saw your podcast and enjoyed a few of the episodes that I listened to. And I thought, I need to reach out and let's do a podcast together. And so I'm glad we did.
Yeah. I listened to your show today with Stephen Ranella, And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of his show because, I've read all his books and I've watched all his episodes of Meat Eater, and I'm on his site a lot because he talks a lot about just meat, eating the food you kill and
Sure.
the animals you kill, and kind of more encompass a lot of the things that I valued in hunting or that I wanted to see in hunting. And I heard you guys get into that conversation about trophy hunting and the image that trophy hunting has today.
Sure.
And I really enjoy his inputs in his viewpoint on these things. And
he definitely has a cool perspective.
Yeah. And when I hear, when I heard Joe Rogan talking one time about podcasts, and he was saying that something that's unique about podcasts, like someone was saying, how do you make money just getting on a podcast and having a conversation, or on a microphone and having a conversation with someone? I don't understand why anybody would sit down and listen to that for sure, like an hour or 2 hours, sometimes 3. And he said, look, conversation is like man's oldest form of entertainment. Like having a one-on-one or having a discussion, for 1 hour of length of time, let's say, there's so much information that comes out of that. And just naturally through the flow of a conversation, that you can't really compare it to things like TV or even radio, where it's usually one way, So I think podcasting's cool. I've been a big podcast junkie for a long time. So I've learned a lot through podcasts, and a lot of times what I learn the most is through the tangents that a podcast goes down.
Sure. Little bunny trails.
Yeah. I heard Steven Rinella talk to someone on the show the other day, and they'll go off for 10 minutes on something that's completely unrelated to the topic.
I love how Giannis's role is to reel Rinella back in, and knowing both of those guys like I do, it's fun to see them in their element. But the reality is Steve Rinella and Giannis are 100% just like that in real life. There is no acting. That is just them.
Right.
And, I always, kind of poke fun at Rinella, saying I've got to have a thesaurus or a dictionary around because he uses these big, huge words, and very intelligent. I really enjoy their show. I've enjoyed hunting with them, and they're good guys, and they bring a really neat perspective to hunting. I think coming from Arizona, where I do, Arizona is a real trophy-oriented state, meaning our state gets managed for high-end, older age class animals, which in turn leads to big antlers, big deer, big mule deer, big antelope, big elk, and big sheep. And so it's kind of part of who we are as hunters in Arizona, that we go out and instead of saying, did you kill a bull? It's how big a bull?
Right.
What'd he score? Oh, he wasn't 350. What were you thinking? And but I think people that don't live in a state that's truly trophy managed for high-end trophy quality, if they were to live there, they probably would be the same way. Just as if I lived in a state that wasn't as trophy oriented, I would probably not have as much emphasis on trophy. And so I always tell people that I am a trophy hunter, but I think a lot of it, of being a trophy hunter, one is trying to harvest an older animal, a more mature animal. We are fortunate in most of my hunting in Arizona and northern Mexico is you have the ability to look at a lot of animals, and you have the ability to choose and to be picky.
Yeah.
If I were to just go out and hunt for meat, which I do, but if I were to just hunt for meat, my hunt would be over within an hour because our state is so animal rich, and I like to hunt. I just assume on a 14-day hunt, kill on the 13th or 14th morning and get that whole time to look at animals and enjoy God's creation. And to me, yes, I am a trophy hunter, but I can talk about trophy hunting all day long because it's not just about the trophy, it's about the hunt. But if you throw me in an environment where you have the ability, like if I were to go on a Dall sheep hunt and I was in a concession that, had lots of rams. Well, I'm going to go there and try and harvest the most mature, the oldest, the biggest ram that I can. That's just the way I am.
Yeah. I remember my uncle lives in Flagstaff, my uncle Kevin Call, and he owns High Point Outfitters. And I'm always giving him a hard time because it's always we're always talking about inches when we're talking to Uncle Kevin. And so I'll say, I just tell him he's spoiled because I'll show him some animal I got, and he's like, yeah, he's good job, He's like,
but you can tell that he's like, why did he shoot that?
Yeah. And so I was applying for Arizona. One time I went down there and I was at we were at a reunion. I'm at his house and he's like, hey, let's go scout for some elk. Let's go check them out. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So this is August. They're still in velvet, but they're almost about to shed. And we get in the car and we drive down the road 5 minutes and there's like 10 bulls. And we went a little bit further and a little bit further. That morning we counted like 70 bulls, and he kept going, man, I wish there was a big one I could show you. And we're looking at like 370 bulls, and he's not excited. I'm freaking out. Yeah. And we drive all the way around, and finally he gets out of the truck. And, look at that bull. And there's some 400-inch bull on this hill. And that's what it took to get him excited. 385, 390, not quite. The 400, tipping 400, all of a sudden, now we had something to get out of the truck for, and
I think it's all a matter of perspective. And
I haven't grown up with that. I had no idea. And so he told me, Brian, I was like, I need to hunt here. I need to come to Arizona and hunt. And he said, well, okay. And I told him, I just want to shoot a 6x6. And he goes, that's pretty much in any unit. And I was like,
you can go on the worst units.
He's like, we can do that in a few years. I mean, he goes, but Brian, I'm telling you, you want to hold out. You want to go over unit 9, maybe 10. So I'm like, So I start applying. I get about 4 or 5 years into it and I'm like, look, I'm doing the math.
I'm ready.
I'm doing the
I'm
math.
ready.
Yeah. I'm like, I would rather go and hunt there 3 times and shoot just an average 6x6 type of bull, and come home, then go there 1 time and shoot a 400-inch bull.
You're in for the experience, the bugling, the interaction, and just the fun of the hunt. And that's great. And I think that's refreshing and fantastic.
But like Kevin, he's been there. He's already done that. He's experienced that since he was a kid in Arizona. And so for him, he's way more advanced in the amount of elk he's encountered and hunted and stuff, just because of the state he lives in, to the point where, if he did what I did a few years ago in Arizona, it would be kind of boring for him and over too quickly. But for me, it was a real treasure,
Yeah, for sure. I have not met your uncle. I know of him, and I know some people that do know him. I see the big animals that they do harvest and shoot, and I admire what they do. And surprisingly, I have not met him. I believe my hunting partner Dar has met him. Yeah. I mean, Arizona is just
it's a cool
it's a cool state. It's kind of a freak of nature. I mean, I'm fortunate. I guide in the state and guide for some of the biggest sheep in the world. We have incredible bighorn sheep. We have incredible elk, coos deer, mule deer, antelope. And, people ask me, well, don't you want to hunt bull elk every year? And I say, well, I am an outfitter. I'm a guide. So I get to, I spend 30 days. I spend the entire month of September. I have for the last 20 years videoing, photographing, patterning, and looking at bull elk. And to me, I like chasing them with this video camera just as much as I do with a bow. I love taking photos of them. I love taking video, and Arizona is definitely a really nice place to be from, for sure.
I've got a question for you on that, like as a guide. So, like a lot of the listeners that have come to the Gritty Bowmen podcast have been do-it-yourself hunters. We've kind of done that. We've talked a lot about just over-the-counter tags kind of stuff. And you being, in Arizona, and I know my uncle being an outfitter, there's definitely within this DIY community a stigma or a negative attitude toward outfitters.
Absolutely.
Or anybody who hires an outfitter to go hunting is considered less of a man than, or, he bought his elk.
Yep.
What are your
Let's
thoughts
talk
on
about
that?
Yeah. I think there's several different perspectives. The first perspective that I want to bring to light is I understand the DIY mentality, and that the rich guy pays for his animal, and that the guide does all the work, and the guy just shows up and pulls a trigger. It's been my experience on 99.9% of all of my hunts that the hunter is just as in tune with all of getting his bow tuned, all of how are his broadheads flying, all of every yardage, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, however far, having a backup bow, being in shape, having, the equipment and spending time. I have never, that I can think of, had a client that just wants to show up and shoot. So I think first and foremost, from my perspective, maybe there are guys like that, but I don't see guys like that. The guys that hire me, and I think the same guys that hire your uncle, are guys that say, look, because I'm only going to draw this tag every 10 or 15 years, and because this is maybe one of my only opportunities to harvest my best bull or my best ram or my best buck, I am going to, instead of fumbling around on my own, I'm going to spend some money and hire an outfitter who already knows the country inside and out, and I'm going to try and be as efficient as I possibly can. So to me, speaking quite honestly, sometimes I have a problem with the DIY mentality, not in the fact that I think it's great, go out and do it, but if someone wants to be efficient and they live in Oregon, they don't live in Arizona, they don't have the resources to come down and scout, 4 or 5 times like what the tag should be, then maybe it's okay for them to spend money to hire someone that is local and can speed up the process of scouting and where are the animals, so that they can have, because tags only come around so often, I think it's important that, from my perspective, that people hunt efficiently. Now, if someone wants to say, I wouldn't hire an outfitter if there was a 500-inch bull and they had him tied to a tree, I don't want to shoot it, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I do kind of see the gripe between DIY and non-DIY, and I just think people need to look at it from every perspective. I totally understand wanting to do it on your own and going through all of the struggles to get that bull or get that ram or get that buck. But I also want to say, I know a lot of guys that have paid money that are just as hard a hunter as any DIY guy there is. That does not mean that they're sleeping in late and that they're, not out there hiking around. It just means that they want someone to shorten the learning curve.
Yeah. I think that in some ways, what I see is there's some jealousy involved.
Yes.
When a guy can go out with a tag or with some money and get a tag that others cannot, there's some jealousy involved. But if you pull that aside, if you pull out that and you look at it analytically, I feel like when someone goes out and hires a guide, I know a lot of friends who have a lot more money than they do time.
Right.
They just have a lot of money, but they don't have a lot of time. Just, maybe they could rearrange their lives or change their priorities, but for whatever reason, that's not in the cards for them right now. And hiring a guide just seems to make a lot of sense. Watching my uncle be a guide and seeing what he does to go to run his guide service, and being someone who actually basically, he had him guide me on a hunt, it really did change my perspective on hiring a guide, knowing one personally, and meeting them, hanging out with them, and realizing, that this isn't, like you said, like tying them up. You're not roping that elk and tying them up to a tree.
And I don't want to say that that situation doesn't exist, because there are situations, say on a rifle hunt, where it may be as simple as a guy watches an elk and watches him come in and out of a field, in and out, and the guy shows up and he goes, all right, shoot him. That may happen. It's not happened to me.
Yeah.
Most of all of our hunts, we have to work very hard, blood, sweat, and tears. And, there's ups and downs like with every hunt. I would say that I've known of people that have been strict DIY, and they have actually looked down on people that have gone on guided hunts. And I'm just going to throw this out there. It's a little bit controversial, but it's my opinion. And I've seen some of those same people fall into money. They've had circumstances where all of a sudden now money isn't an issue. And I don't want to say that all DIY is a money issue, because it's not. But I've seen situations where people are DIY and they're against any guided hunts, and then all of a sudden their income level gets bumped up. All of a sudden they're thinking, and I've seen it, where they can go hunt on a little bit of private ground, or they can go on a guided hunt, and all of a sudden their tune changes. So the only thing I would say is, if you're DIY, stay DIY, and that's great.
Yeah.
But don't knock others, and then all of a sudden circumstances, because to me, going on a guided hunt, let's face it, takes money.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't have to be rich to go on a guided hunt, but you definitely have to have money, disposable income to go on a guided hunt. So I just hate when I see people that have been staunch DIY for 10 years, and, whatever happens, and all of a sudden their income level comes up, and all of a sudden they're changing their tune. It's like, it's hard for me to take as a guide when they've been pointing their finger at me the whole time, saying,
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm not trying to be.
No, I saw on Facebook just the other day a post that I was following of the governor's tag being filled, I believe, right there in Arizona with that monster giant bull.
I actually just did a podcast episode today on that.
Oh, really?
With the guide that guided that.
So I followed the post, and I was like, then there were some real haters on there. I mean, really strong haters. And but there were so many hunters though that I was encouraged by that didn't hate on it, and they talked about the governor's tag and how it works and the conservation dollars that stem from that. I think he bought the tag for around $350,000. All of that goes into conservation.
Yeah.
And it's a resource that the state has to continue to raise money to manage the animals for all of us. And I would love to be the rich guy that can pay $350,000 for the tag. I would love it if that was me. It's not. And I think, Brian, most of the haters out there, and I saw probably the same post you did. In my opinion, it's a jealousy thing, like you said. Now, I want to make something clear. We live in America. This is a capitalistic society, and I graduated college and I had zero money to my name, and I started my real estate license or my real estate business with nothing. Yeah. And I built that real estate business up with hard work, with no money. And I built that into a really nice business of buying and selling properties. And so I have a real hard time when I hear people talking about the guy with money, or the guy, and he just, it was handed to him. Well, most rich people that I know have never had anything handed to them. There are some trust fund cases where they get handed, and that's a different case. But most rich people that I know have worked very hard for it. And so my idea with these auction tags is, it kind of stinks that if a guy just shows up, he flies in that night and he comes in the next morning and he shoots the animal. Yes, I don't like that. I have seen auction cases where guys come and hunt for 30 days. Or they come and hunt for 2 weeks. And, what is the time amount that's okay in everybody's eyes? I don't know that anybody would argue or agree that there's any set day that, okay, if he hunts 7 days, then it's okay. Yeah.
My point is, without these auction tags, speaking specifically in the state of Arizona, that money goes directly for that animal on the ground. And unless these people that are haters don't step up with their own checkbook and just write checks to the Arizona Game and Fish Department, nobody's gonna. So from my perspective, looking at auction tags, And I'm not a rich guy. I'm a middle class guy. But those auction tags have a lot of value because there's no other way that we can generate that much money for our animals. And so, in my opinion, the haters have got to quit hating. And we've all got to start supporting all the hunters. And, what I just said about DIY, someone could say, well, you're hating on DIY. No, I'm not. I have my opinion. I have my perspective. That's what we're talking about. But I think in general, and I think that's why your podcast is great, other podcasts are great, we need to unite hunters together. And we need to understand that there's more than your side of the story. That there's these people over here and these people over here, and everybody has a different perspective. But the thing is, we're all sportsmen. We're all hunters and fishermen. And, so what if someone pays $500,000 to go shoot a bighorn sheep? It's one bighorn sheep. What can that $500,000 do for that state? Unless those same haters are going to all get together and say, we don't want auction tags, we're going to make up that $500,000. It's just not likely.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion on auction tags.
I completely agree. I've heard Dave Ramsey talk about this in a way like when you have a rich person go out and pay $350,000 for a tag and then go and harvest an animal like that, there's a lot of resentment and anger associated with it. He mentioned this like, okay, well, because they say often, well, that's not fair. It's not fair that they get to have that much money. It's not fair because it was just given to them. And like you said, his point was, yeah, most of them, it wasn't given to them. They worked their cans off for it.
Right.
And the other thing he said was compare this to like, no one's really out there going, it's just not fair that Michael Jordan is such a good basketball player. I mean, we should all be as good as Michael Jordan. It's just not fair. No one resents him for his athletic ability in the same way that at least not in the same way they do resent a rich person who, and that rich person got there because they're like a Michael Jordan in the economic world. I'm not Michael Jordan. I'm more middle class. I'm more your high school basketball player. Okay. That's who I am. And now I'm trying to break out, or I try to be successful given the skills that I have and whatever talent I have, whatever work ethic I have. I try to employ all of it to be as successful as I can. But I'm not maybe, let's say, Michael Jordan in the economic world. And so when I see someone else that's a Michael Jordan in the economic world that goes out and pays $350,000 for a bull tag, I say, cheer him on. Good job.
It's nice to know that there's people that can go do that. And we live in America, and it's nice to be able to have the ability to say, maybe I want to do that someday. Or maybe you would, if you had that money, maybe you would never do that. You would, give it to your parents or your kids or whatever. And that's fine too. I mean, everybody has the right to do what they want with their money. And I think as sportsmen, we need to unite and we need to support each other. And I listened to a podcast on Joe Rogan, and he had Corey Knowlton, and he paid $350,000 for that. I think it was a black rhino. I may be butchering a white rhino, a black rhino. And I mean, just blew up. Just
where they dart it.
Crazy.
Right.
And no, he actually harvested it.
Oh, okay.
But when I listened to the podcast on Joe Rogan and I listened to Corey's whole thing, this was a rhino there was only a few male rhinos left. This was an old rhino that was actually killing the handful of other male rhinos. And the one that he killed was actually one that was not even fertile. So he was a non-productive rhino, and he was actually getting it out of the herd so that the endangered part of that group, and I could be butchering it some, the surviving young males now would not be getting, hit with the big horn and killed. And this one that he had harvested actually had killed some other young rhinos.
Right.
And then the whole village came and fed the whole village. And, the money, the $350,000, I believe, went into the whatever rhino conservancy fund that went to try and establish and bring those back. So people need to understand that this money goes to, this isn't just some rich guy pulling up in his helicopter shooting and then the money gets thrown up in the air. That's not the case. Our game and fish agencies would not be able to function without this money.
Yeah, and that's where I think folks get hung up on, in the public arena, outside of the hunting industry. We hear often things about anti-hunting, all the anti-hunting push. And I think that's one thing that they don't realize is hunters are conservationists. And that title seems to be getting taken from us. And I think one of the things I like about Stephen Ranilla's show and others that are kind of in that same vein is they're really promoting sportsmen in a different light than they have in the past, than many shows have in the past. And it's bringing to light the conservation efforts of our industry. And like you said, it's more important that we stay together than divided. And when we get caught up in jealousy and things like that, it hurts our industry. It hurts
all of
our
us.
Future, our lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I mean, we need to support each other. We're going to have differing views on a lot of things, but we need to support each other, and we need to accept, that we disagree and move on, but know that, I support you. I've got your back. You've got mine. And we need to stop all of this. We can't be split anymore and divided. We have to be united.
Well, and that brings me up to another topic I had interest in. That I wanted to talk to you about, and that is around sponsorships within the hunting industry. Because, when I'm watching, like, let's say I'm an anti-hunter, right?
Yeah.
And I'm watching some hunting TV show. I'm sitting on the outside and I'm checking it out, and I see on the show the guy walks out. He doesn't talk much about the country he's in or what he's the beautiful animals or anything else, or conservation. And instead he goes out and he says, these broadheads are amazing. They cut the biggest hole, and this bow shoots the straightest arrow. And I couldn't be out here and be successful without my such and such boots. I feel like so much is product driven that we lose sight of the real reason we're all out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I think in the day and age of, sponsorships and pro staffs and all of this different stuff, I think it's a challenge because, I'm sorry, my battery was here. Okay. There's no credibility. I think with all of the sponsorships and I'm on this pro staff and I'm on this pro staff, and it's like, well, are you on the pro staff because you feel like that is absolutely the best equipment and it's the best product that you could use? Or are you on that because someone gave it to you for free, or because you're being paid to say that's the best? And I do believe there is some amount of commercialization. I mean, looking at my own podcast, when I was looking at sponsors for my podcast, I had to make sure that the sponsors were a company that I believed in.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, but I do think there's a lack of credibility somewhat, not only in the hunting industry, but I believe across the board. I mean, you see a race car driver switch from one oil to the other. You see in our own industry, one guy switched from Matthews to Hoyt.
Yeah.
And in for the last 3 years, they've been promoting Hoyt bows, and now all of a sudden they're promoting Matthews bows. And you can pick any company you want. I'm not right. Specifically picking on those companies. I'm just using it as an example. And the whole idea of pro staff is a little bit skewed, because honestly, if you have a guide's license, or if you've hunted a lot, or if you have a website or a podcast or an Instagram page, you can get some sort of pro staff. Yeah. What does pro staff mean? Well, pro staff really doesn't mean that much, because it's been so watered down and diluted, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think though that, and I said this before, that pro staff, a lot of a lot of guys sign up for being on pro staff because it validates them.
Yeah.
It's more of a label than it is an actual benefit, really.
And I think you're right. And I think, I don't want people to think I'm, this angry guy from Arizona, but you bring up a good point. And that's, it's like, why don't you go shoot the 3-pointer to win the game 4 or 5 times? And why don't you, be the assist leader and prove yourself before? It seems like more guys are just trying to go out and get on pro staff than trying to prove their art and prove what they can do and be the real deal. Yeah. They're trying to get the cart before the horse. They're trying to be sponsored before they've done anything. Yeah. And like a friend of mine says, he says, well, sponsor me. I'm really going to do things. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. You can't get sponsors on what you think you're going to do, or the biggest one is I'll work harder for you than anybody else has. Well, that's subjective. I mean, right. Everybody works hard.
So what do you think, the impact is of the culture this commercialization that's occurring, that has occurred?
Well, I think the impact is people lose credibility quickly. And I think that's the one thing that they're trying to get sponsored. They're trying to get on pro staffs. And by doing that, they're willing to accept any pro staff that will accept them. I think what they end up doing is they end up hurting their brand. They end up hurting themselves. They end up hurting their reputation. And to me, credibility is everything. Reputation is everything. Once you have a reputation that is scarred, you have a really hard time fixing that.
Yeah.
And, we're all humans. We all have problems and we all have our own issues. But the reality is, you don't need to go out there and borrow trouble. You need to prove what you can do, and you need to bring value. I see a lot of people that are trying to get sponsored and trying to be on pro staffs. Why? I mean, are they bringing value to the community? Are they bringing value to that company? From a company's perspective, a lot of times I see these companies that are huge. They sell 40, 50, 60, $100 million in stuff a year. What do they need some guy from South Bend, wherever, Indiana, and who they don't?
Yeah.
So unless you're providing educational, informational, entertaining value, or you're shooting in 3D leagues and you're winning every time where you are an authority in your field.
Yeah.
I think people need to calm down on the pro staffs.
Well, my biggest complaint is one of the issues. I agree with you on the lack of integrity. That there's a what did you say? That credibility. That there's a lack of credibility now because of, and I think anti-hunters see it as well. They look at the hunting industry and they see certain shows and they're like, that guy. There's not, I don't believe a word he says. Right.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of companies too, there's only so many companies in the hunting industry, right? And there's only so many dollars and there's so many guys and people trying to make money in the industry. And so I don't grudge anyone for trying to make an income.
Absolutely not.
Make money.
Like we said before, this is America. Go out. This is a capitalistic society. Yes. Do it. But do it with merit and do it with value, and know that you have to earn your stripes before some company's going to throw down and be like, "Yep, we're sponsoring him."
I like that. I like what you're saying. What I see happening sometimes is the only people that are there's not as many people spreading the message that I would like to hear about hunting because they're so busy spreading the message that they are sponsored by so and so, or that they love this product because they get paid for every time they say it or do it or push it. Right. And I would like to see so much more of that energy that they are using to promote a product go into promoting a conservation or a better image for hunting.
Lifestyle.
Yeah. And I sit here and I hear these things like with backcountry hunters and anglers and other Mule Deer Foundation, these conservation groups are working very hard to try to reverse like the declining mule deer populations, or who are trying to make sure that our public lands stay public. And there seems to be so little talked about that stuff, except for those groups that go out and talk about it and then the bulk of hunters are out talking about, did you see that new broadhead, or did you see that new, that new setup? And it's just, that's the part that concerns me, right?
Yeah.
We're so busy playing with our toys that we don't really, what our pastime and our livelihood, our passions are getting taken away from us.
I think you make great points. I think Randy Newberg, the Meat Eater guy, 0.0, is producing another podcast. Randy Newberg, I believe it's called Unfiltered, and I've listened to a couple of episodes. And Randy has his own TV show. But one of the things I do like about Randy is he takes a political stand, he takes a conservation stand, and there may be things that I don't agree with him on. Yeah. But he's not afraid to be out there in the public eye, and he's not afraid to voice his opinion, and he's not afraid to support these organizations. And, I think we all need to unite, and we need to support the National Wild Turkey Federation, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, the Mule Deer Foundation, all the different things, Trout Unlimited. There's a lot of things that as for me, as a sportsman, that I take for granted. And I try and pinch myself every day and say, don't do it, because without these organizations, half the stuff that you like to do, you wouldn't be able to do, because, National Wild Turkey Federation, what an unbelievable conservation story in this country.
Yeah.
Turkeys were barely even surviving, and now they're thriving even better than ever. And that's direct effect of National Wild Turkey Federation.
Right. Absolutely. I completely agree.
That's getting off the subject a little bit of sponsors and pro staffs, but I mean, it kind of all ties in together.
Yeah. So another question I had, was around,
here we go.
Was around,
here we go.
Was around fitness. We talked about this a little bit offline, and, you brought up, cause I just did a podcast recently with Aaron Snyder around diet and fitness. I've done one recently with Mountain Ops, Casey and Jordan Harbertson. We had a great time visiting. Yep. Although they're a little on the skinny side. But we have this, this push, this big kind of cultural drive in the hunting industry about being fit for hunting, being healthy for fit and strong, fast, and all of that for hunting. And even to the point where, I was very reluctant to do a podcast on it. And I work out a lot, and I think there's just a handful of photographs of me on Facebook where I've actually posted something about something I did. And, the podcast I did with Aaron, is the first one I've done. I'm like 20 episodes in, and that's one of the first ones I've done on like just straight fitness. Yeah. And I've been reluctant to do fitness type podcasts because it seems like everyone out there is talking about how to be fit and what to do to be, and that it's the recipe for success. If you don't, you got trained to hunt and stuff. And if you're not out there and you're not hyper fit, you're probably not going to be successful. Now, I'd like to hear your take on it, because
I bet you would.
You had an idea on that as well.
I have a little bit differing opinion on fitness. And I want to say, first and foremost, I think you need to be as fit as you possibly can. And I don't think you can be overfit. Here's what I have a problem with. And I can say this, I think, because I'm 42 years old. I'm starting to creep up on the older part of being an older hunter. The younger generation needs to know that being fit is very important. And the younger generation needs to know that when you're between 20 and 30, it is very easy to be fit. You have no excuse to not be fit, okay? Mm-hmm. When I was 20 years old, I could hike up any mountain in this country as fast as anybody could. But the older I get, maybe I'm actually reverting back, and I'm going to say fitness needs to be more a part of my regimen. But here's what I want to say. In my opinion, people need to work more on glassing, calling, tracking, blood trailing, all sorts of things, mapping, Google mapping, all things that do with hunting more than they need to spend 4 hours a day in a gym. Because muscles and the ability to muscles and endurance can only take you so far. I can take anybody, some muscled up sucker that's just been buffed up, and I'm going to go hunt. And in the first 2 miles, he's back at 500 yards back, sucking wind, going, what did I do? There's a certain point where you need to have agility and you need to have endurance and you need to have some strength. Don't get me wrong, but I think there has been too much of an emphasis placed on fitness. Now, I've said this on my podcast before in several other different episodes, and I get all kinds of emails
Jay,
and response.
It sounds like an excuse not to exercise.
And people would say, you're 42, you're fat and lazy and whatever. But the reality is, when it's hunting season, I have my way to prepare for hunting season. And yes, there's lots of people that are in better shape than me. And I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying you don't need to be in shape. Yeah. I think it is important. But what I think is just as important is to spend time with your binoculars, spend time knowing how to mount your binoculars on a tripod, spending time on getting the right boots for you, spending time on knowing how to call. There's so many hunters out there that 2 days before the season, they throw an elk reed in their mouth and they go, yeah, 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 and they sound horrible. Yeah. And then they go to the woods but they can charge up the mountain and run 14 ridges over, but they've forgotten the main principle of elk hunting or turkey hunting. Yeah. That is to sit and call the animal to you, not to run the animal down. And I feel like being 42 years old, getting slightly up in age in the regards of the hunting, 20 to 60, that I'm starting to get on the older side, that I have the ability to say, work on your glassing, work on your blood trailing, work on your tracking, just follow a track until you jump it up. You may take you 2 miles, it may take you 300 yards, you may take 15 miles. Stay on that track, follow that track until you follow that animal and it jumps up. Yeah. Now you've learned something. I just feel like, and I'm not saying all of the fitness craze is not good, because honestly, it's getting people more healthy, and anything that's going to get people more healthy is great. But guys, in my opinion, spend as much time as you do working out, working on your other skills, shooting your bow, tuning your bow, reloading, understanding your weapon, the whole thing. Yeah.
I agree. I think that when I ask myself, why is this fitness craze out there, right? I think it feels good to be healthy, to exercise,
and it's great.
Fit. Yes. I think that's a big part of it. I think that people want to look good, so then their Instagram photos, they can, la la la, and then but I think, like, you're correct in the sense that the amount of time when they go out in the woods and they're surprised every year that they don't kill anything, yet they're hyper fit, there's something out of balance there. If you want to be successful, if you want to harvest animals and have a successful hunt, my biggest thing is, I like what you're saying. I really do. I think that, a lot of people think that I exercise a lot.
Well, from the looks of you, you do.
I exercise 2 to 3 days a week, and I try to do really effective exercises and keep my workouts short. I don't have a ton of time, but I try to do the things that are going to give me the most results. At the same time, though, I've gained a lot of hunting experience from just being out in the woods. And for me, Jay, I'm not as concerned about people. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I want people to go out there and spend time in the wilderness, more time in the wilderness than they do in the gym with their headphones in. So they're unplugged from technology. I feel like, man, every hour I go out and I sit in a tree stand for a blacktail, or I still hunt for a blacktail in the woods, I'm doing that every chance I get during the rut, during November in Oregon. And that period of time, those 3-4 weeks, whatever tag I draw, that centers me in a way that no amount of exercise does.
Yeah.
When I start trying to, people are like, how can you sit? You sat in a tree stand for 4 days and you haven't seen a single deer? I'm like, yeah, I'm waiting.
Well, and I think that's another skill that you bring up that I want to point out is mental toughness. And to me, I would rather guide a guy that's mentally tough, can shoot his weapon, or shoot his firearm, and can acquire a target, can glass up things on his own. And maybe it takes him a little longer to get there, but as long as he can get there,
yeah,
I'd rather have a guy that has all those skills than some guy that's bumping behind me going up the trail, but he doesn't know which end of the gun to shoot. He doesn't know how to build a pack to shoot something.
yeah.
He doesn't know how to trail a deer. He doesn't know how to acquire, the deer coming out of the brush and acquire. He doesn't know any of that.
Often those things aren't glamorous, though.
And that's kind of my point is fitness is great. If you want to eat great, okay, you're going to live longer. That's going to be better for your family. It's going to be better for your friends. You're going to enjoy life more. So I'm not arguing that. But what I am saying, like I've, beaten a dead horse here, work on other skills as much as you work on working out, practice those things that are going to make you a better hunter.
Yeah.
And mental toughness to me is one of the most important things as a hunter. And in all the hunting and all the guiding that I've done, being mentally tough and being able to take the good with the bad, being able to remain even keel. I'm a very passionate person. My buddy Dar's probably listening to this. My hunting partner, guiding partner is going, even keel? Are you crazy, Jay? But the reality is you have to be tough. You have to be willing to get up at 3 a.m. every morning and get stronger. I see guys that come hunt with me a lot of times, after 7 or 8 mornings, they don't want to wake up the 8th, 9th, 10th morning. Whereas I feel like after 14 days, I'm just getting warmed up. Mm-hmm. And so people need to train their mind more than anything that they can, see success, see the hunt unfolding, and don't be afraid to learn. I learn from everybody every day. I love podcasts. Every time I listen to different podcasts, I learn something.
Yeah.
On the internet, we have such great resources. I'm an avid turkey caller. I'm an avid elk caller. I'm really into being a student of the game. And I feel like if these young guys, and I'm not picking on you young guys because you guys are studs and, we've got a great up and coming generation. But what I'm telling you is practice the things that you can have some control over. We already know you're going to be fit, so be fit, but practice all those other things and practice being mentally tough and see yourself being successful.
Well, one of the things is I agree with you. I think when you're out there like 4 hours, 3 hours a day in the gym working out, that's great. There's a lot of other things you could be doing with your time that's less productive. But at the same time, I feel this way that the hours in the gym should also coincide with hours in the forest or in the wilderness or in the area where you recharge, where you get to experience the outdoors. And I don't know how to describe it, but being able to sit still, I think I heard Stephen Ranilla talking about this. I think it was on your podcast and also with Randy Newberg when he was talking about the skills he learns from hunting a species in a different part of the country. Like, he's like, so does me hunting elk in such and such part of does that help me be a better hunter when I go back home and I chase, let's say, blacktails?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've thought, gets me thinking, right? The viewpoint, the concept. And I think absolutely in my mind, I'm thinking, yes, emphatically hunting, like being out in the outdoors and trying to hone in on a single animal, find out where it's going. Where does it live? Where is it going? Like these whitetail hunters, often I have friends that are like, whitetail hunters don't really know how to hunt,
And they say, oh, they just sit in a tree stand and they sit off an ag field. They don't know what they're doing. Well, let me tell you something about that. There's a guy named Bill Winke. You've probably heard of him. He writes in all the major magazines. He owns MidwestWhitetail.com. Okay. Mm-hmm. The guy is considered, the godfather, so to speak, of whitetail hunting.
Yeah.
You take that guy and you put him on any hunt, anywhere, he's going to get it done. You know why? Because he thinks of every little analytical aspect of the hunt. He thinks of every little detail. He hunts a deer that, if they hear anything from a half a mile away, they're on alert. I mean,
Yeah,
so I think
I
I
agree.
want to, you bring up a great point, and I want to encourage people that, here's the deal. You may be good at what you hunt in your backyard, but when you need to go other places and hunt and realize that you're not as good as you think you are. I have that. I have to pinch myself all the time when I think, oh man, we killed 25 turkeys this year. I'm great. Well, why don't you go to Iowa? Why don't you go down to Mississippi and try and kill a turkey? You think you're so good. So I want to encourage people to, be fit and have a positive attitude, but try and learn everything you can about your hunt, your area, the animal you're hunting, everything you can. I love being a student of the game. I'm a big fly fisherman, and I row my own raft, and I take people fishing just for fun. And
I've seen your pictures.
I took on rowing because I fished a lot. I just wanted to be good at rowing. I want to everything I do. And I don't want to say that the way I do it's the right way. I don't want to say that at all. But it's been very rewarding for me to pick new things up and try and be as good at it as I possibly can and know everything that I can know about it and try and be a doer and not one of those guys that, oh, well, I can do that. Well, can you really?
Yeah.
I want to be the guy that's, rode off into some bad thing and flip the boat and learn from it. Not the guy that's, oh, yeah, why'd he do that? Well, go out there and learn from experience. Do it.
Yeah.
Go out, do it.
When I hear guys talk about the whitetail hunters being like that, I think it's pretty short-sighted because after having patterned blacktail, I often listen to like Wired to Hunt because I really want to learn how to handle black because it's very similar. A lot of guys say it's not the same. It's not the same. I'm like, blacktail are a little different.
There's a lot of similar traits.
There's a lot of similarities, and
yes.
I pattern and track the same deer on my property every year. I know which one's which, and now and then a new one pops up, gets me excited. But after having spent years with cameras and sitting in trees and observing deer behavior, and I know so much more about blacktail deer now than I ever did. And then animals in general. Like I am a 10 times different hunter now because of the blacktail deer experiences I've had than I would be if I hadn't pursued or spent the time, going after them. Now, in the beginning, I thought a lot like some hunters do toward whitetail, it's not the same. You walk out there and you just shoot when you hang in a tree and da-da-da. No, when you start to really try to chase mature animals, older animals, a higher age class animal, they're not dumb. They are old for a reason. And when you try to kill one, you try to hunt one, it brings out another level of woodsman skills that didn't exist before. I heard Steven Ranella talking about trapping on this thing with Randy. Him and Randy Newberg went off on trapping on the Meat Eater podcast, and he was talking about how because they're trappers, Steven Ranella says, well, trappers end up making the best hunters. With that bold statement, he's saying that because they're trying to predict what animals do and understand animal behavior in a way that's different than just walking out and walking through the woods hoping you'd run into one.
Yeah.
And I think, back to the fitness discussion, tie it all back in together, that the fitness thing is important so you can get out and live healthy and have fun. But these other parts of understanding game, understanding the world around you and moving through the forest and predicting what animals are going to do and where they're going to be, all of that comes from actually putting in the time doing woodcraft out there hunting. And so don't spend so much time in the gym that you lose out on all of that.
Yeah. I definitely think studying animals' behaviors and being able to communicate with animals, whether it be calling blacktail deer, calling turkeys, calling elk, calling coyotes, whatever, being a student of the game, learning what the animals do, why they do it, to me that's everything with hunting. I love all the aspects of trying to figure out, why that coos deer goes here, why that bull elk comes out and doesn't come out, in the mornings, but he comes out in the evenings and trying to be a student of the game. And, part of why I love being a guide is it allows me to spend way more time than even if I was just hunting on my own, because I am trying to do everything I can to get my client the best situation, best opportunity, and give them the best hunt that they possibly can. So I'm trying to eliminate all of the outside variables, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can about those animals. And I constantly am reminded every day of how much I don't know. Yeah. And how much I have to learn. And I think that's one of the beauties is no matter how good you think you are, the very next one, you may just completely blunder it and botch it. And that's what keeps me coming back. It's very intricate. It's very detailed, and sometimes it's easy, but most of the time it's not.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I had a really good time today. I mean, is there anything else?
Hopefully I haven't offended all of your listeners yet. So
no, not at all. Same here. I think it's, I firmly believe this. And when I started doing podcasting, this is what I had told myself was, just to be myself and to give my honest opinions. And if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. That's okay. We can still be friends. Doesn't mean, but at the same time, I tell myself, don't water down your message. If you have a passionate opinion about something, or if you feel like you have something to share, don't be afraid of what others might think of what you say. Because when you water down your message, so you're careful not to offend this person, that person, and that person, pretty soon your message is meaningless to everyone. Yeah. Because there's no real authenticity to it.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. And I think, you have to be yourself and you have to be authentic, just like you're saying. And the reality is we're not all going to agree on everything. And half of what I've said could be wrong today. It's just my opinion, and I've been doing this long enough. I feel like I can have an opinion. It may be completely wrong. It's my opinion. Yeah. You have your opinion, but we're all hunters. We're all sportsmen. Let's get along. Let's pat each other on the back. Let's compliment each other when we do good, and when we're down and your buddy's down, let's lift them up and let's not beat them down. And we need to bring the best out in hunters, even your competitors. We need to stop all of this rolling around in the dirt, and we need to support each other, and we need to feel blessed and thankful that we are blessed to be able to do what we do. Number one, in this great country, and number two, in God's creation here, we have the opportunity to interact with his animals. And I believe it's a God-given right to hunt and provide meat for your family. So it's exciting for me. I'm excited to be on your podcast, and I'm going to double air. I'm going to air this on my podcast. So I want to appreciate having you on, and I'm happy to be on your show, and love watching all your videos. And I'm excited to dig in more to the Gritty Bowmen and see what you're all about. And it's been a great episode here.
I appreciate that, Jay. I really do. And for folks that are out there, I just want to encourage those that are following my podcast to go out there and give Jay's a listen. I post a lot of my shows on YouTube, and what I found is there's quite a few hunters out there who really don't know how to download a podcast or access a podcast. So in the next few weeks, we're putting together, just a quick instructional thing like, hey guys, this is how you do it, and this is the way to maximize the experience. But absolutely, guys can go out and people can go out and find your stuff on iTunes. They can go to jscottoutdoors.com. Is that right?
Yeah. Let me tell your listeners where they can find me, and you tell your listeners where they can, I guess vice versa. J. Scott Outdoors, Western Big Game Hunting and Fishing Podcast on iTunes. You can also go on Podbean. If you're a computer or Android user, you can go to Podbean, and it's jscottoutdoors.podbean.com. You guys can follow my website, jscottoutdoors.com. I have an Instagram page at jscottoutdoors, YouTube channel J. Scott Outdoors, and Facebook page J. Scott Outdoors. That's a little bit redundant, but tell my listeners where they can get a hold of you.
So our website is kind of our central hub. You can go to www.grittybowmen.com. and you'll see some links there for podcasts, and that's all our podcasts are there. You can watch them via YouTube. They're embedded on the channel. You can go to our YouTube channel and subscribe there and also watch them all. All the podcasts are video. Then you can also go to iTunes and download the audio only version and right to your podcast app. And today I just posted them all to Stitcher, so those Android users can now go and listen to them on Stitcher and download them to their app there. And we have films on our website. We put together some short movies. We have like 5 films that I'm in the process of making right now. They're a lot of fun that I'm excited to share. And we have one film, our kind of debut film, is in the Full Draw Film Tour right now. So I encourage people to go support the Full Draw Film Tour. Go to their website.
I've heard great reviews, by the way, on your movie that's in the Full Draw Film Tour. I've heard great stuff. So congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, I've received a lot of really positive feedback there. And, I wanted to make films that that are meaningful to me, that have a message that I say it, films that matter. I guess all films kind of matter to a degree, but I wanted them to be about life as much as they are about hunting. So this one is about my best friend's father and him and their quest for a big bull elk, and so it's a good film. So I encourage people to go check out the Full Draw Film Tour. It travels from city to city, and go out there, and they do some great fundraising things for different organizations, and they've really helped kind of us budding filmmakers, us guys out there that really wouldn't have the platform to share our films on that we want to give us a chance to get our movies out in a way that is pretty neat. So the film there, and links to all of that can be found on grittybowmen.com, our website.
Awesome. Well, buddy, it's been fun, and thanks for having me on, and look forward to doing it again. And I wish you the best of success this fall if we don't talk, and I'll be anxious to see all the great content that you guys are providing, and I'll be tuned into the Gritty Bowmen, and I just appreciate it.
All right. Me too. Thanks, Scott. Jay, I really appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the J. Scott Outdoors Western Big Game Hunting and Fishing Podcast, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Use the promo code JScott and receive a $50 KUIU gift card when signing up for the GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today.